Hey guys, Cleo here, and today we're going over my November TBR. November TBR is quite a short one because my October TBR had like 5 books in it, which is also relatively short, but I had to carry one over from September, and so I had 5 books again. But even regardless of that, I was still able to finish my TBR before the final week of the month had started, so I had a full final week to mood read, and so hopefully that is also going to happen in November with only 4 books on my TBR. However, some of them are pretty intimidating, some of them are pretty hefty, and there are other reasons for intimidation than just the sheer size of them, so let's just dive into it. So November is non-fiction November, and I'm actually going to be reading 2 books for it. Every single other year I've kind of been blindsided by non-fiction November, basically just the few weeks before it figured out, oh yeah, it's non-fiction November, but I'd already set like my November TBR and couldn't really change anything anymore. This year I was prepared like months in advance. I already put these books on this TBR, so I came prepared this time. And so the first one is a memoir, which is The Glass Castle by Jeanette. So this is a memoir about basically this girl who grew up in circumstances that made her grow up quickly. You know, she was in a household with a very free-spirit mother and with a father who, when he was sober, was a real inspiration to them, but when he wasn't, was very much a destructive force. And so she and her siblings had to grow up really quickly, and so this story is going to be partly about that. It's basically part of her memoir. I don't know whether the memoir only focuses on her childhood years or not, but that's definitely part of it at least. And so I have seen this one around quite a few times, and I've seen very good praise for it. Don't actually remember how this book ended up on my shelves, but I'm very happy to give it a try now in Nonfiction November. Second book for Nonfiction November is basically sort of like TBR veteran at this point, but not in the sense that it's been on my shelf for that long, but I have put this on quite a few TBR videos, and so that is Konko by David van Reybrouck. So this is a Dutch book, a Dutch non-fiction book about the history of Congo. Congo used to be a colony of Belgium, and so this book will dive heavily into the colonial history, but I'm definitely very eager to see if it also goes beyond that, if it also looks at the history of Congo before the Belgians arrived at and at what came after. So it's a daunting book. It's probably one of my most intimidating books on my shelf, and so every single previous time that I've put it on a TBR, I've basically been kind of procrastinating on it. And I did read the first 24 pages or something like that previously, but that's really just an introduction, so it really doesn't give me a lot of an insight yet into what the writing style is going to be. Is it going to be dry? Is it going to be very easy to get through? This, however, has definitely been a bestseller in Belgium, and so hopefully that means that, you know, I am going to not really struggle with it. Aside from that, even if it is a little bit on the drier side, it is a history that I do feel like I need to learn more about, because in high school we already learned a little bit about our colonial past compared to my parents, who never got anything taught to them about that. But we also got the bare minimum, so I feel like I don't think we spent a whole lot of time on our colonial past, and I definitely feel like I need to learn more about it. So this is the big chunker for this month. This is 600 pages non-fiction. This is my big hurdle for the month of November, I guess, but hopefully it won't feel like a hurdle. The other 2 books on my TBR are fantasy reads. First up, we have my sort of like Cosmere project. In the month of November, I'm going to be rereading Dawnshard. Dawnshard is a novella within the Stormlight Archive. It's supposed to be read between books 3 and 4. So I'm not rereading the first 3 books in Stormlight Archive this year. I reread them last year, so they're still fresh in my mind. But so Dawnshard and Rhythm of War are books that I've only read once so far, and so I'm going to be rereading those in November, December. Dawnshard I had a little bit of a mixed experience with, because the first half of the story is very much a travel story and I was bored throughout, but the second half I really loved a whole lot, so hopefully that first half will be more enjoyable this time around. This book also very much has disability representation. I in general don't necessarily recommend Brandon Sanderson's physical disability representation, because it very much falls in line with the typical narration of disabled characters getting healed through magic. But that is not the way in which this story develops, and for this particular novella he also very much made use of disabled beta readers, so he definitely had sensitivity readers who knew what they were talking about. And so we're definitely able to steer him in the right direction if he made any sort of mistakes or if he made any sort of insensitive plot developments, I'm guessing. So I definitely did like the disability representation within this one, and so that's also something that I'm eager to rediscover again in my reread. And then the final book on my TBR, which is the second most daunting book on that TBR, is A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. This is a fantasy book that is originally published in French, and as you might be able to tell, I have the French edition for it, so I'm going to be reading it in the original French. I have high school level French, so I'm not entirely sure how well this is going to go. I have previously read like the first 2 Harry Potters in French, but of course those were books that I knew inside out, and so it was quite easy to read them in French in that regard. Whereas this is going to be a story that I have no experience with, that will have fantastical elements that I need to figure out in French. So I don't know whether this was a smart idea or not, but here we are. This is also like the least intimidating looking 500 plus fantasy book ever, I guess, because look at that, it's just super tiny. I cannot believe that that fits 500 pages, and it's also super floppy. So I do definitely like this edition a whole lot, actually. I think the English editions are just like more beautiful because they're like these gorgeous hardcovers and these pastel colors, but this one definitely feels like it's going to be a super comfortable read in any case. So yeah, in the Mirror Visitor series, we are following our protagonist, who's this girl who can touch objects and read their history, I think. And it's also set in this sort of world in which cities are these sort of like floating spheres. As far as I'm aware, it's very much a political fantasy, and our protagonist is basically caught up in a sort of like arranged marriage at the beginning of the story, but I don't know too much about it. But I am very much looking forward to it. I want to read more translated literature in the year to come, and I definitely also want to try out some translated fantasy more. And so if this one is a success, then I'll probably read the remainder of the series within 2022. Yeah, that is my November TBR. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what your opinions are on them. I'm definitely kind of daunted by some of these, and so even though it looks super manageable, I'm definitely concerned when it comes to that French fantasy book and that long-ass non-fiction work. So even though there are only 4 books, I'm really quite intimidated by this choice, but luckily I have these 2 shorter books to balance that out. By the way, also let me know if you're participating in Non-Fiction November. It is a genre that I don't read often, but I do want to make sure that I get around to them every November from now on, because I think it's a nice way to make sure that I'm also getting some non-fiction reads in. But so yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video and see you guys for the next one. Bye!